Final Fantasy XIV is a game that lets you do it all on one character. Replaying the whole story just so you can play a white mage instead of a paladin? Forget that, just pick up the wooden stick you want and you can start spamming glare whenever you want to. In fact, one of the only reasons to make an alt was to replay the story, but with New Game Plus being added in Shadowbringers, that's no longer an issue. So really, what's the point of having an alt? My name is Vic Wright and we're going to be talking about this today. So let's take a look at some of the uses for alts. Whether you can only have 2 or 6 retainers per character, you have to remember that that is per character. So when you make an alt, it doubles the allowed retainers, meaning you can rake in more materials and more profits. So that's one of the reasons for alts. Another reason is you could be really into role-playing or G-posing. Having an alt means you don't need to pay for a Fantasia constantly whenever you feel the itch to take a screenshot in a different race. Just log onto your other character and get to snapping. It's also very useful for the same reasons for those into roleplay. The downside of this, however, is you need to level the character, play through the story, etc. to get the glamours or locations you want. Unless you want to use some sort of modification tool, but you wouldn't do that, right? Right? Another reason is it can just be for fun. Some people really like to just chill out and have something to do at their own pace on the side. And some people just really like grinding and want to do everything a second time. I know a few of those people. They're kind of crazy, but I respect it. You might also just want to join multiple different FCs. Each character can only join one FC, so if you want to join more of them, why not just make an alt and chuck it in there? You can have your alt to play with your friends, and you can have your main character to play with your other friends. The only downside of that, of course, is you have to swap your character every time you want to see the other FC's chat, so it's a bit awkward. You'd probably be better off just using a link shell, if I'm being honest with you. But, some people like to do that. In a similar vein to that, some people also like to do that for playing with friends on other data centers. You got a friend on NA but you play on JP, you can make an alt there to play with them. However, we do have cross-data center travel being added sometime in the future, so we'll have to wait and see what that really means for that, because that might negate the point for that altogether. Therefore making those types of alts obsolete. And finally, the reason that I think would be probably the biggest one would be for raiders. For those who don't know much about raiding, you only get one chance at loot per fight each week. Combine this with the weekly cap for endgame tonestones, and you start to see how gearing up a job can be fairly slow. And that's just for a single job or a single role. By having an alt dedicated to raiding, you can gear up 2 characters at the same time. If you want to be able to play multiple things, for example, such as have your main character be a healer and have your alt be a tank, you can gear up both tanks and healers at the same time and pace, as long as you're willing to do the fights twice every week. The other good reason for a raiding alt is that when you clear a fight, you can't really go back and clear it again, otherwise everyone else with you is going to miss out on loot. So if you have an alt, you can have your own character for personal play, going ahead, clearing the fights at your own pace, and then you can have another character for a static. So that way you don't have to worry about impacting everyone else in the static if you've already cleared that week. Really, it's just a way to give yourself an extra chance to play at your own pace while also committing to a static if you really like to commit to statics. Another reason is for a lot of the older MMO players out there, it was a standard to always have one class per character. That's the way games always worked. So for some people it's more of a nostalgic reason or more of a habit, like it feels correct to have one character for each class. That way you get to play with multiple different races, you get to make multiple characters. I can see the appeal in that. It just feels a little bit weird in Final Fantasy XIV when someone goes, man, I play Samurai, but I really want to play Monk. Even though they share the same gear and I can have them both in the same character, I'm just going to go make a new character because I want my Monk to be a Hrothgar instead of a Lalafell. I don't know. These are just some of the reasons why I think alts are useful for anyone wondering, and yes, there is actually a reason you might want alts, but at the end of the day, I kind of think Final Fantasy XIV is a bit alt unfriendly for the most part. There's definitely uses, but the game's designed so you definitely don't need to have alts, and you can avoid them altogether if you don't even want to think about it. So going back to a point I made a bit earlier about people who like to make different characters for each class, I really understand that feeling. Like sometimes I think, man, I really wish my Dragoon could be a Ro and my Samurai could be an Aura. But I don't want to Fantasia my main character just so I can play a different race when I play a different job. Like it's a bit much. And I kind of miss that aspect of other MMOs, even though I really, really love the fact that I can do everything on one character. I think it's great. Something I always tossed around the idea of with friends is if they had sort of a system where, similar to how you can make a character to be a retainer, you can make a character to be canonically like your party member who plays that job. So, say I make an Aura at the start of the game and I main samurai. Whenever I'm playing the story, I'm my Aura who's a samurai. But I could make a Roguedin and have them be my warrior. And then that way, whenever I play warrior, I'm swapped to that Roguedin. I think that could be a really cool, interesting thing to do, but I could see that being very difficult to implement this late in the game. So maybe it'd be for like a future MMO, be it Final Fantasy or a different series. I could also see a sort of worry that it would affect Fantasia sales, but I mean at the same time, if you could have multiple characters for every single job in the game, think about how many more Fantasias certain people would buy. That would be a lot of money there. Just saying, Square Enix. Think about it. But anyway, I think that's an idea that's definitely not going to happen in this game. It would have to be a much, much further on in the future game. But anyway, thanks for watching this shorter video of mine. If you have any other reasons for making an alt you can think of that would be useful, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear any other reasons you guys can think of. And with all that, I'll see you next time.